My name is Gabriela Martinez, and for 3 months, I secretly fed a 10-year-old boy who came to my diner every morning. He never ordered anything, just water. I watched him stare at other people's pancakes with hollow eyes that knew hunger too well. So I started bringing him extra food the kitchen accidentally made. He never asked questions. I never told anyone. Then one Tuesday morning, 4 black SUVs with government plates pulled up outside, and a decorated colonel walked through my door asking for me by name. My hands trembled as he said, "Miss Martinez, we need to talk about Christian." That's when I learned the truth about the quiet boy I'd been feeding, and why his father's final letter mentioned my name. I've been a waitress at Sofia's diner in Miami for 3 years now, and I can tell you everything about my regulars without them ever saying a word. Mr. Henderson takes his coffee black, 2 sugars, reads the sports section first. Mrs. Chun orders egg whites, no toast, always leaves exactly 15%. I know their rhythms, their patterns, their lives reduced to breakfast orders and small talk. But I didn't know anything about my own life anymore. At 29, I was living alone in a studio apartment above a dry cleaner on 8th Street, close enough to work that I never needed a car I couldn't afford anyway. My father died when I was 15, heart attack in the middle of his shift at the port. Mom followed 2 years later, grief disguised as pneumonia. The aunt who raised me moved to Scottsdale for the dry air, leaving me with monthly phone calls and birthday cards that arrived a week late. I wasn't lonely exactly. Loneliness suggests you're missing something specific. I was just quiet, invisible. The kind of person who exists in the background of other people's lives, refilling coffee and clearing plates and smiling professionally while thinking about nothing at all. Then Christian appeared. It was a Tuesday in early October when I first noticed him. He was small for his age, maybe 10 years old, with dark hair that needed cutting and eyes that tracked everything while revealing nothing. He carried a backpack that seemed too heavy for his thin frame and sat in the corner booth farthest from the door, positioning himself where he could see both the entrance and the street. He ordered a glass of water. Just water. I brought it with a paper straw and a smile. He thanked me with the smallest nod, then opened a dog-eared book and began to read. I watched him from behind the counter, the way his eyes would drift from the page to the plates of pancakes and eggs being delivered to other tables, then back to his book like he was forcing himself to look away. The second morning, same thing. Water, please. The book. The careful observation of everyone's breakfast. The third morning, I started to understand. This wasn't a kid waiting for his parents. This was a kid who was hungry. By the second week, I knew his pattern like I knew my regulars. He arrived at 7:15, exactly 45 minutes before school started at Lincoln Elementary 3 blocks away. He would sit, read, sip his water slowly, watching other customers devour stacks of pancakes, crispy bacon, buttered toast. At 7:55, he would close his book, thank me quietly, and leave. Having eaten nothing. On the 15th day, I made a decision. I carried a plate of pancakes to Christian's booth, setting it down like I'd made a mistake. "Oh, I'm sorry," I said, keeping my voice light. "The kitchen made an extra order. I'll just leave it here instead of throwing it away." Christian looked up, and I saw it, suspicion and hunger fighting in his expression. His hands remained flat on the table, not reaching for the fork. "It's okay," I reassured him. "Sometimes the cook gets the orders mixed up. Better to eat it than waste it, right?" I walked away before he could protest, my heart pounding like I'd done something dangerous instead of decent. From behind the counter, I watched him stare at the plate for a full minute, his internal debate visible in the tension of his shoulders. Then, slowly, he picked up the fork. 10 minutes later, when I returned to clear the table, the plate was empty. Christian's eyes stayed fixed on his book, deliberately avoiding mine, an avoidance that broke something inside me. "Thank you," he whispered. It became our unspoken arrangement. Every morning, I would bring the mistaken order, or the extra batch the cook made. Pancakes one day, scrambled eggs and toast the next, oatmeal with brown sugar when the mornings grew cold. Christian never asked for anything, never initiated conversation beyond his quiet thanks, but he ate every bite. Sometimes so quickly it seemed he feared the food might disappear if he hesitated. "Who's that kid you keep serving?" asked Mr. Henderson one morning, his newspaper folded beside his empty plate. Never seen his parents. They don't know, I admitted, refilling his coffee. But he's hungry. Rosa, who worked the grill, cornered me in the back after the third week. You're feeding a stray, she said, not unkindly but with the pragmatism of someone who'd seen good intentions backfire. You give handouts, they never learn gratitude. He'll just disappear one day. They always do. I didn't argue. I simply shrugged and said, I used to be that hungry too. Rosa's expression shifted, softening with understanding. It was the most personal information I'd shared with my coworkers in 3 years, and I immediately regretted the vulnerability. But it was true. After Dad died and before the life insurance finally came through, there were weeks when Mom and I survived on rice and canned beans. I remembered the shame of it, the way hunger made you feel invisible and visible at the same time. Christian never volunteered his name, and I never asked. Something in his demeanor, the careful way he entered and exited, how he angled himself to see both the door and the window, told me that questions would only drive him away. So instead, I made sure his water glass stayed full, that the pancakes were always warm, and that the diner felt like a place where he could breathe easier for 40 minutes each morning. By the 6th week, others had noticed my routine with Christian. Most said nothing, but some couldn't resist commenting, their observations laced with the particular cruelty of those who've forgotten what it means to need help. Playing charity worker on company time? Asked Mr. Davison, a businessman who frequented the diner. His tone suggested he found the entire arrangement distasteful. Kids these days expect handouts everywhere, remarked another regular. In my day, no one gave away free food just because someone looked sad. I heard these comments but let them slide off like rain from a window. I'd learned early that defending kindness often hardened the hearts of those who criticized it. However, Miguel, the diner's manager, wasn't so easily ignored. He called me into the small office behind the kitchen one morning, his expression serious. I've been watching you with that kid, he said, fingers tapping against the desk. Can't have employees giving away free meals. It's bad for business. I understand, I said, twisting my apron. I'll cover the cost myself. Miguel's eyebrows shot up. From your tips? Those barely cover your rent. It's my choice. Something resolute in my voice made him study me more carefully. Just 1 meal a day. I can manage. After a moment, Miguel sighed. Fine. But if it affects your work, or if that kid causes any trouble, it stops immediately. Understand? I nodded, relief washing over me. Each morning after that, I set aside a portion of my tips, money that might have gone toward new shoes or the dental appointment I'd been postponing, and paid for Christian's breakfast. On a particularly cold Thursday in November, Christian didn't show up. I found myself checking the door every few minutes, an uneasy feeling settling in my stomach. I prepared his usual plate of pancakes anyway, setting it at his empty booth just in case. Waste of food, Rosa muttered, shaking her head. By closing time, the untouched plate had become a silent rebuke. I wrapped the cold pancakes and took them home, unable to simply throw them away. Christian didn't appear the next day either. Or the next. A week passed with no sign of him, and I began to wonder if Rosa had been right. Had he simply moved on, as strays often did? The thought left me with a hollow ache I couldn't explain. I'd known nothing about him, not his name, not his story, yet his absence felt significant. A small light extinguished. Told you, Rosa said on the 10th day of his absence, not unkindly but with the assurance of someone whose pessimism had been validated. They never stick around. During this period, I noticed a customer taking photos of the empty booth where I still occasionally left a meal. The next day, I discovered why. A local Facebook group had shared the images with a mocking caption, Sofia's Diner now serving imaginary charity cases. The comments were worse. Publicity stunt. Creating dependency. That waitress needs a reality check. That night, alone in my apartment, I questioned everything for the first time. Was I foolish? Was I projecting my own past onto something I didn't understand? Seeking comfort, I opened the small wooden box where I kept my most precious possessions. Inside lay a faded photograph of my father in his army medic uniform, his smile gentle despite the harsh desert backdrop. Beside it was the small leather journal he'd carried through his service. I opened it to a dog-eared page, reading words I knew by heart. Shared half my ration with a local boy today. Martinez said I was crazy, that he'd probably report our position. Maybe. But the look in his eyes when he ate. Same as mine when Mom would save me the last piece of bread during the hard times. No one grows poor by sharing half a loaf. I traced my finger over his handwriting, sudden clarity washing over me. I didn't need to know Christian's name or story to recognize hunger. And hunger asked for bread, not questions. The morning of Christian's 23rd absence, I arrived at the diner with diminished expectations. Still, I prepared a small plate of pancakes and placed it at his usual booth. At 9:17, everything changed. The first sign was the sudden quiet that fell over the usually bustling diner. I glanced up to see 4 black SUVs with government plates pulling into our small parking lot. They moved with choreographed precision, forming a semicircle in front of the entrance. Customers stopped mid-conversation. Outside, pedestrians slowed to stare as uniformed men emerged, standing at attention beside each door. From the lead SUV stepped a man whose bearing commanded attention before his uniform did. The officer was tall, weathered, wearing a dress uniform adorned with rows of ribbons that caught the morning light. He scanned the diner's facade before walking purposefully toward the entrance, flanked by 2 younger officers. The bell chimed as they entered, unusually loud in the expectant silence. Miguel emerged from the back, straightening his tie nervously. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" "I'm looking for someone who works here," the senior officer said. "A woman named Gabriela." The diner became so quiet I could hear the refrigerator humming. All eyes turned toward me as I stepped forward, coffee pot still in hand. "I'm Gabriela," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. The officer's stern expression softened slightly. "Gabriela Martinez?" I nodded, setting down the pot before my trembling hands betrayed me. "My name is Colonel David Hayes, United States Army Special Forces Command." He reached into his breast pocket and withdrew an envelope, crisp and official-looking. "I'm here because of a promise made to one of my men. This is a letter from the commanding general, and I have a personal message as well, from Christian's father." "Christian?" I repeated, the name unfamiliar yet somehow significant. "The boy you've been feeding for the past several months," Colonel Hayes explained. "Christian Torres." His father was Master Sergeant James Torres, one of the finest soldiers under my command. The past tense landed like a physical weight on my shoulders. "Tentar novamente." "I don't understand," I said, still not taking the envelope. "Is Christian okay?" "He's safe," the colonel assured me. "He's with his grandparents now in Colorado. But for almost 3 months, he came here every morning after his father was deployed on a classified operation." The pieces began falling into place. Christian's solitude, his careful watchfulness, the hunger that seemed deeper than physical need. What Sergeant Torres didn't know, the colonel continued, was that his wife had left shortly after his deployment, abandoning Christian. The boy was too proud, too afraid of being taken from his home to tell anyone. He managed alone, using the small emergency fund his father had left. A collective murmur of shock rippled through the diner. My heart constricted imagining Christian surviving alone, waiting for a father who would never return. "Sergeant Torres fell in Afghanistan 2 months ago," Colonel Hayes said, his voice professional but not without emotion. In his final letter, he wrote that if anything happened to him, we should thank the woman named Gabriela at the diner who fed Christian without asking questions. He opened the envelope, removing a handwritten note on faded paper. He wrote, "If I don't make it back, please find the person who's been giving my son breakfast." Christian mentioned her in his letters. He said she never asked why he was alone or made him feel ashamed. She just fed him day after day, expecting nothing. Tell her she didn't just feed a hungry child, she preserved the dignity of a soldier's son. I accepted the letter with trembling hands, tears blurring my vision. Colonel Hayes straightened to attention and rendered a formal salute, a gesture of profound respect rarely given to civilians. Behind him, every military person present did the same. "On behalf of the United States Army Special Forces," the brothers in arms of Master Sergeant Torres, and most importantly, on behalf of Christian, thank you. I stood frozen, overwhelmed that my simple acts, pancakes, eggs, a glass of milk, a smile without questions, had meant so much to a boy living through unimaginable circumstances, to a father fighting his last battles far from home. I didn't know, I finally managed, voice barely above a whisper. I just couldn't let him go hungry. The colonel nodded. Sometimes that's enough, Miss Martinez. Sometimes feeding a hungry child without asking why they're hungry is the greatest kindness of all. 3 months later, a letter arrived from Christian. In carefully formed letters, he wrote, "Real heroes don't always wear uniforms. Sometimes they wear aprons too. Thank you for not asking questions when I couldn't answer them." I framed those words. Not for show, but as a reminder that small kindnesses, offered without expectation, can change everything. This is my story of triumph. Do you think I handled it correctly? If you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Share your thoughts in the comments. I can't wait to hear your perspective. Don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe to Memorable Stories and Overcoming, where we share inspiring stories of triumph and justice every single day.